So today we're going to be working on making shields, and there's going to be a plaster casting system. Now I'm going to show you some examples of shields right now. And those examples are kind of showing you medieval shields that kind of represent different houses and the things that were important to them. And so for you, when you're designing your shield, you're going to want to keep that in mind. Now, shields can be in a traditional shield shape like this. They can be in a rectangle. You could even choose like a different shape to represent what you want. I am going to sketch out mine to be in that kind of normal shield shape. And I'm going to show you how to be able to kind of move through step by step. So for this project, you're going to need one piece of white paper and a pencil to do your rough drawing before you begin. You're going to need the remainder of the clay from the first project that's left over. If, perchance, your clay was all used up, just send me a message and I will put some aside for you to be able to pick up. It's handy to be able to have some smaller items to be able to do impressions with, as long as another toothpick would be useful. Spoons, forks, anything you can kind of dig or make impressions with are also good. From your kit for this project, the most specific thing you're going to need is your bag of plaster, which many of you have sent me messages about, and you'll need your watercolors for the final stage. So we are going to begin, and I'm just going to move you guys over here so you can kind of see my design, and then I'm going to show you the steps to make the plaster casting. Okay, so for my project today, I'm going to be building a shield, and it's going to have a puppy on it. It's going to have some letters on it to represent our first names of my family. I'm going to use Cook for my name because that's the family I married into. I'm gonna put some cows on this side to be all like hooray for Hogue, and frog on the other side for my Emily side. And then I'm going to use these spots here to do impressions into the clay. So I'm gonna use this cow to do like its face. And I'm gonna use this cow to be kind of the flat piece. I'm gonna use this glass frog to do some of my impression work. And I'm gonna stick the little puppy face in there. I brought out this owl just in case. And we'll kind of see what we need. And I'm gonna use the toothpick to kind of do some of the base work. All right, so first things first, I'm gonna take my plaster and I'm gonna use a piece of styrofoam to kind of build my thing on. Any paper plate would work, any regular plate would work too. I just need something that's flat, that's gonna kind of be the overall shape. At this point, it was just taking off your rings before you go crazy. Okay, so I flattened out the clay on the bottom here because that's what I'm gonna start by pressing into, and I'm gonna use my thumb to make the impression of the shield shape. Okay, so I'm going to press in to make the shape of the shield with my thumb. Okay, and now I'm gonna use my thumb to kind of smooth this out. If you have like a rolling pin or a spoon or something you wanna use to help flatten it, you can. But I don't wanna press all the way through because I need something to be able to do my impressions in still. So you can see now I've got the inside kind of smoothed and into the shape of the shield. So at this point, I'm going to use my toothpick and I'm going to carve in the parts that I want to have lines. So I want to have a line here and I want to have a line down the middle. And then I'm going to use the word cook. Now I want to do my letters backwards because this is going to come out backwards. When you're making a casting, You're always going to get the reverse of the image that you were doing. So I'm going to go around right now and I'm going to smooth off all of these little bits and bobs. And I'm going to make sure my channels are nice and clean. By channels, I just mean like where I've cut into the clay. Okay. It's really important that you want to try to have very few undercuts. Undercuts are when the spot on top is skinnier than the spot underneath. Sometimes the clay won't go in very well, or it'll be hard to be able to get it out of the mold. Pretty much what we're doing is we're making a big mold to pour the plaster into for it to set. Next, I'm going to take my little cow and I'm going to switch sides because it didn't work super well where I had it, and I'm just pressing it in to get the shape that I want. Now you could draw everything out if you wanted. Instead of making the impressions, but making the impressions is a little faster and you can get some really cool shapes. Okay. Yeah, that looks pretty good. You want to make sure whatever you're pressing in is very washable. This frog I wanted to include because my grandmother and I always had a big thing about frogs. I'm going to put my puppy down at the bottom there. Lift him out. Okay. And then I'm going to go in. And I want to put in those letters, so backwards J, backwards J. Luckily an A does not have a backwards or a forwards. So I've got my shield a little more solid. I pushed up the sides so that there'd be more room to dump the plaster in. The plaster is going to be roughly 2 parts plaster to 1 part water. So I have filled it 2/3 full, so I'm going to add another 1/3 water, stir, 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 and then I'm going to dump it in. I put an extra plaster because sometimes you mess up and it's always good to have a little backup. And I'm not sure exactly how big of a shield you were going to make, so then you have a little extra in case you need it. So I did the measurements that I was planning on and it still looked a little like wishy-washy to me, so I threw in some extra plaster to help thicken it. You want to make sure that all of your plaster is dissolved before you pour it in. But then you're just going to pour it into the mold. And then you're just going to wait for the plaster to set. You can leave it overnight. You could give yourself less time. It really depends on how warm the room is, how quickly the water evaporates, how the plaster will set. Before you let your plaster set entirely, you want to like tap to make sure the air bubbles are out. So you're just going to kind of just like this to try to get any bubbles to pop. Don't be too aggressive because you don't want all your plaster to come out, but you want to make sure that you kind of give it a good so that all of your bubbles pop, and then you don't have any bubbles at the bottom that might impact what your plaster is going to look like when it's finished. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are going to move on to the second half. Now if your thing dries right away, you don't need to wait overnight. But today we are going to take the clay off of the plaster piece. You see all the cool little bits and bobs, and I'm going to bring you over to the side again and I'm going to show you how to finish this with watercolor. So as you can see, we have picked up a lot of the detail from the different pieces. If things are sticking out too far, you can try just like picking them off. like that, but be careful. Once it comes off, it's really hard to put it back on. Now, because plaster absorbs water really well, using the watercolors is how you should finish this. I'm just gonna show you a little bit. So you're just gonna take it and apply it, and you can kind of work your way in to kind of get your items to have a lot of texture. You can use some of the techniques from the watercolors originally, like you can definitely do some transparency layers on top. You could probably try a little wet into wet. Don't put any of the rubbing alcohol on it, or the wax crayon won't work, but you'll be able to kind of get a bit of variety with your color. So I can kind of go in and be like, here's the nose of my cow. Okay, and that's how you can kind of work on finishing it. So that is our plaque, our shield, our crest, our kind of interesting way to try to like look at using clay and plaster differently, and to be able to build and create something using a different technique. So I hope you enjoyed it. You'll probably have a little left over, so you could always experiment and try to build something else afterwards if you want with your leftover pieces, because you won't need any more of the air dry clay or the plaster going forward. All right guys, I'm looking forward to seeing all of your work. Bye!